A final chorus for Your Ears Only. I'm David Alpern.
I'm Melissa Exelberth with a quote from the news. I've had so many things done to my body that when I die, God won't know me. That was Phyllis Diller, a pioneer in female stand-up comedy who died last week at 95. Her characteristic cackle will surely identify her, despite all the cosmetic procedures. Now this.
I fall in love too easily. I fall in love too fast. Quando o dia está bonito, ainda a gente se distrai. Mas que triste de repente quando o véu da noite cai.
Luciana Souza sings American standards and the songs of her native Brazil on two new Sunnyside CDs released this week. One is The Book of Chet, a tribute to the late jazz master Chet Baker. The other is Duos III, her third collection with top Brazilian guitar players. And to talk about them both, as well as her life and larger career for Your Ears Only, we're pleased to have Luciana Souza on the line now. Welcome to our program.
Thank you, David.
Let's start with your family roots in Brazil and Brazilian music. Tell us about your parents in Sao Paulo.
My mom and dad were both songwriters. My dad was a singer and guitar player, self-taught, born in the northeast of Brazil, and my mother was born in Rio. They met in Rio and had a bunch of kids, 5 kids. I'm the youngest of 5. And they ended up in São Paulo. They built a recording studio and wrote jingles for many, many decades, and also had a label that released a lot of great Brazilian music. So I grew up in that environment, going to the studio when I was a kid, and it was sort of my backyard and my after-school activity.
So that's how you started singing, I guess, at age 3 in radio commercials. Tell us about that, and can you remember what you were promoting?
I can, Melissa. I was, after school I'd just go to the studio, and my parents early on realized that I had musicality and I could sing in tune. They didn't force me into it. It really just sort of was very natural. All my siblings are musicians or have something to do with music. And they were doing, any commercials that required a child's voice or needed that sort of brightness or softness or sweetness of a child's voice, they would sort of invite me and include me. And so I started at age 3 and mostly doing, candy commercials or toys or maybe, a department store that had a children's department or something. But I also ended up singing some important things in Brazil, like, Coca-Cola jingles, and then also this theme for Sesame Street in Brazil. I was a part of that, which makes me very, very happy and proud.
Wow. Talk about your decision to study music more seriously in the United States, and where?
Well, my parents didn't want any of us to be musicians, of course. They knew what a hard life musicians have, so they wanted us to be doctors and dentists and lawyers, and, but all of us ended up in music. But in Brazil, there wasn't really a school where I could really get a graduate degree in music, in popular music, because I knew I wasn't going to be a classical singer, so I needed to do something that was more focused on folk music or pop music. And so my brother ended up at Berklee College of Music, and he helped me get a scholarship. I got a full ride to go to school in Boston, ended up doing a master's there. After a few years in Boston and seeing how seriously music is taken here and the great opportunities and the fact that you can be a musician and have a dignified life and survive in music here really made sense for me, and I ended up staying and teaching. And, here I am 20-some years later.
Talk about your duo series. Not two voices like Frank Sinatra and Tony Bennett made famous, but you and a small army of famous Brazilian guitarists, one at a time. Why that?
Because my father, Melissa, was a guitar player, and I think that's sort of the soundtrack of my life. I remember just listening so much to the guitar and my father self-accompanying and just single voice and guitar. The clarity, the sort of the transparency of those two instruments, and the sound of the guitar, the fact that it decays and it goes away and the voice is on air. It's a pretty abstract relationship, really. And there's nothing solid, and, it's not a hammer like the piano is or a percussion instrument that you're hitting. It's quite delicate. And I think it really suits my style and the music that I choose to do.
Switching to your other new CD, why songs associated with Chet Baker, a trumpet player and singer mainly of the 1950s and 60s?
Well, I've always been fascinated by his sound, and, his tragic life was something that was always in the background, but more so the sort of vulnerability that he has. His sound is so beautiful, so normal. And it's not a masculine sound. I mean, I love Frank Sinatra, and I love voices that are very strong and deliver with a, phrasing that's very precise. Chet has something else. He has a certain normal quality to his voice, very human, and I'm very attracted to that. And I just wanted to do, pay homage to him, but more so to find my voice within his repertoire.
Do you find it easier to sing in English or Brazilian Portuguese?
obviously Brazilian Portuguese because it's my native language, but I've lived here long enough to I understand English very well. I try to speak it well. I'm always working on my diction. It's a different thing. It's a different process for me.
You'll be singing songs from both of these CDs around the country this fall, New York, Los Angeles. How do these personal appearances compare with studio recording for you, given your earliest roots in a studio? If you had to pick one or the other, which would you do?
Oh, my God, that's such a hard question. I love the studio because you're so focused and you are amongst friends and everything is just ready. Like, the lights are down, you get low, and you can really just focus. The silence is around you, so you can really focus. But what I love about live performances is that you have an audience in front of you and you have the moment, and you're a jazz musician, so you're interacting and listening. They're equally wonderful. I think now that I'm done with the record, I prefer to sing it live and charm people and entertain them and conquer them and move them. That's really what I want to do.
From your club dates and music sales, what's your sense of the audience and, frankly, the future for the Great American Songbook and the Great Brazilian Songbook in our new era of rap and pop?
What I find is that the response has been incredible. I'm here talking to you guys today. I've had a lot of positive responses. So I think the future of music, if this kind of music, if it's not great and opening, I don't think it's closing anymore. I think people who like this music will always look for it, will always find it, and there will be artists like myself who still want to present these beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous, and timeless songs.
Luciana Souza's new CDs are Duos 3 and the Book of Chet, out this week from Sunnyside.
I fall in love too fast.
And this has been For Your Ears Only.